but there is one way the Hawks could potentially make him happy. Russ reportedly still lobbying the team to sign Antonio Brown. Remember, they considered bringing in AB last year before he ended up in Tampa. Well, we've got former Pro Bowl receiver Greg Jennings with us now. Greg, good to have you with us. Start with you. You think adding AB would be enough to keep Russ happy and, more importantly, keep him in Seattle next year?
Well, I think it would be a start. Anytime a quarterback wants an additional weapon, and the weapon is a guy like Antonio Brown, that would bring obviously immediate value to your team, to your offense, yes, it would be a start. However, you still have to protect them. You still have to do the other things. And I think for so many of us looking at this situation, we would think that once the season starts and they start to accumulate some wins, everything will subside, everything will be okay. And I believe that to be true. However, I think it's bigger than that. I think Russell Wilson just simply has been fed up, and he is tired of what he has had to endure in his tenure in Seattle. It goes to, Brandon, you've talked about it over and over and over again, Pete Carroll, and him having a heavy hand and a heavy say in all things offense, all things football operational. Right. And Russell Wilson being the face of that franchise for so long now, and wanting to have more input as well as more say offensively and just overall in personnel. He's tired of it. And it's not just that he wants them to do what he needs them to do or implement all the things that he desires. And this is what a fan or some of us, even in the media, kind of gets misconstrued. But if you're not listening to a player at the caliber of Russell Wilson, then it sends a message to everyone in that locker room that, yeah, you can have something that you want to implement, but we're not really interested in what you have to say. And I think that's the wrong message when you're trying to build and trying to sustain wins like the Seattle Seahawks. And it starts with Russell Wilson, and he's disgruntled. He's not appreciated the way that he feels like he should be. That's a problem. And adding a guy like Antonio Brown would be a start, but I don't think it would solve their problem.
Right. Yeah. Greg, it's not enough, and the Seattle Seahawks need to do much more. All right. Here's the things that Russell wanted. Right. And he said it. We all know it. Offensive line. What did you do? You didn't do anything. You re-signed your center, and that was I played with them. You know, it was a guy when I was there, you put him at guard. You put him on the left side, you put him on the right side. Then last year, you finally put him back to the center position, and he did good. All right? So, like, that's a good sign. But is that a dude that can keep Russ upright? I don't know. So you didn't do much there. You got to continue to bolster that offensive line, and they haven't even started that process. Second, they want more playmakers. Russ is looking at it like, man, I love it here. I want to be here. I've done a lot here, but you got to give me more. You keep trying to invest so much into the defensive side, but the Legion of Boom era is over. And the last thing is, let me cook. And Pete Carroll, get out my kitchen. It's everything that you just said, Greg. Like, please, Pete Carroll, get out my kitchen. Like, you're a defensive guy. You're a great leader. But at the end of the day, you got to let me do what I do. Please, if I throw 2 picks, 3 picks, guess what? You gotta die with that. You got to live and die with how I play. Because why? I am the winningest quarterback in the National Football League through 9 years. So those 3 things is what has to happen for this to work. Now, they might fight through this year, but next year, it definitely will be a different situation if they don't do those 3 things, Nick. Bolster that offensive line, bring in more playmakers, and Pete Carroll get out the kitchen.
Yeah, and I'm going to let you and Greg focus on the last thing, which is essentially offensive coordinating for the Seahawks and figuring out how to make that work. I'm going to focus on the first couple things, which is the GM side of things, which is spending money. So via our great researcher, Dusty, he sent me this from Spot Rack, and I find it to be a very interesting list. From 2012 to 2020 to now, the cheapest teams in free agency are the following: the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Bengals, the Packers. Now, the Bengals are cheap because the owner's cheap, so throw them out. Those other 4 teams, you might be like, well, seems like, you know, those teams are all consistently in the playoffs, pretty good, competing. Yeah, but In that run, despite having Ben Roethlisberger the whole time, the Steelers made 0 Super Bowls. In that run, despite having Aaron Rodgers the entire time, the Packers made 0 Super Bowls. And in that run, despite having Russell Wilson the entire time, the Seahawks haven't made a Super Bowl since he was done with his rookie contract. And part of them making the Super Bowl was Russ was great, but also it was they crushed the draft for 3 straight years. They got Earl, then they got Bobby Wagner and Russ in the same draft. In between, they got Richard Sherman after the 100th pick of the draft. That type of draft annihilation is not a sustainable, duplicable process. And so the point that I'm making is this. In the modern NFL, you must participate in free agency. This past year's Super Bowl champion, what did they do? Oh, they went out and got Tom Brady and others in free agency. The year before, the Chiefs, oh, well, they drafted Kelsey and Hill and Mahomes. Yeah, but in free agency, they got Honey Badger, they got Frank Clark from the Seahawks, by the way, a guy the Seahawks drafted and moved on from. Like, aside from the Patriots, all of our Super Bowl champions, or nearly all of them, of the modern era, have a major impact free agent involved. And I don't think the Seahawks get that. I don't think the Packers get it. I don't think the Steelers get it. Now, they can say, but that's why we're always in it. That's why we're always winning 10 games. And the question those teams need to ask themselves is, would I rather be 10-6, 11-5 with no Super Bowl appearances for 5 years, or go win a ring and recognize, but we might be 5-11 when the bill comes due? Now, the worst case scenario is you're the Saints, which is you don't get the ring and you spin, and now you have to tear it down. And that's a risk some teams aren't willing to take. And I think Seattle's not willing to take it. So maybe Wilds, they get AB because he's cheap, but they don't participate in large part in free agency, which is part of Russ's frustration.
Okay, so Nick, I thought the way you started was very interesting. So Greg and Brandon can talk about how the offense should run, and you can talk about the money as our resident GM. I will talk about the media narrative. What are you talking about, Russell Wilson and Russell Wilson's camp? This is just another misstep that has my brain in a jumbled mess. For now, you want AB? Have you rescinded your trade list? Have you done a radio interview? Say, by the way, take my trade list and throw it away. I'm going to stay in Seattle, and in Seattle, I would like AB. But the trade list is still live. The trade list still live. It's like, yeah, I want AB. So if you're AB, you're going to go to Seattle, Greg, and then have Russell Wilson pull a Magic Johnson and be like, nah, I'm not going to be here. It makes no sense. Before you make any requests for Seattle, I need to hear you say, I love Seattle. I want to be here. My trade list is dead. I'm sorry for putting the Cowboys on it when Dak was obviously going to sign a contract. It doesn't look like it, Brandon, because it looks like that everyone's looking for the Bears to just up their offer on draft day. And now you're going to make requests. AB is going to show up, and Russ is going to be wearing a Bears uniform. This makes 0 sense. The first step, Greg, in my mind, and tell me I'm wrong, is Russ saying that he's in Seattle and then start figuring out how to add pieces. That's what Tom Brady did. Tom Brady wasn't like, yeah, you know what, I'd like AB, and you know, but I'm not necessarily gonna be here. It makes no sense to me.